How's your Monday going?
Hey, thank you very much, Scott. It was an interesting Monday. What say you, Steve?
It was a Monday. It felt like a Monday, but it was a
Yeah,
good one.
Mondays always feel like Mondays, but well, when we get in here and take a look at the market action, there was a lot more opportunity than one would think just by looking at, say, the action of the SPY today. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So welcome everybody to the August 1st office hours. I'm Jamie, and that's Steve and Scott. And let's
Hey,
just
what
go
are
ahead.
the odds the three people that just commented are all named Dave or David with different last names?
You're right.
Hello, David and
We
Dave's.
got hey Dave's. Hey,
David's.
and there's an old Kids in the Hall skit called "These Are the Daves I Know."
Forgot that one. They were funny.
Okay, all right. There's your humor for the hour, ladies and gents. Just gonna go ahead and get rid of the legal mumbo jumbo here, just to make sure everybody in attendance is aware of the fact that all the information that we share with you guys in these webinars is for educational purposes only. Simply meaning if you need somebody to tell you what to invest in, what to buy, what to sell, when to do it, that is not us. If you need that type of service, please seek out a registered investment advisor or someone like a licensed Series 7 stockbroker that can legally dispense investment ideas and buy and sell information and all that good stuff to you in a legal sense. All righty. Always like to take a little bit of time at the top of the hour here, especially for the new folks, to let everybody know about the community that we've fostered around the tech that is Trade Ideas Pro. And of course, most of you are already familiar with the trading room hosted by Barry. Barry opens up the doors 30 minutes before every open, and it is a great environment to be in. Doesn't matter if you're a brand new trader, seasoned, grizzled veteran, or anywhere in between. Um, Always good information flowing in there from Barry and the other more established members of the room. And you know, when Barry does slow down after the first couple of hours or so, he does not mind answering questions about TI. So it's a great resource and it is free. So if you haven't been taking advantage of that, you probably want to do so. Of course, every other Monday, you get myself and Steve. Every other Tuesday, Steve's going to take the steering wheel, and Andy Linloff is going to ride shotgun with him. And of course, every other hump day, Wednesday, we've got Dan Merkin, our CEO and founder, along with Brad Williams, always entertaining with those two. And then every other Thursday, Andy's going to round out the 5 p.m. Eastern slots with Andy's trading studio, and I'm going to ride shotgun with him. But of course, every Monday through Friday, day in, day out, we've got the daily live support session from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. Each day of the week is handled by a different personality here at Trade Ideas, and it's a great place to get your questions answered in a live environment where you can see their screens and all that good stuff. So if you haven't been taking advantage of the daily support session, by all means, get in there and do so. Here's the URL, trade-ideas.com/live. That's hosted on our YouTube channel. So that link is static. Bookmark it for easy access. As far as additional training goes, all right, these are all videos that are located on our YouTube channel. And especially if you are brand new to the product, 101 and 201 are a must, all right? Get you through all the basic functionality. Will certainly help you shorten that learning curve. And of course, get these down under your belt. We do have the intermediate 301 and 401, which covers things like back testing and the more advanced functionality of Trade Ideas. So once again, all of these videos are hosted on our YouTube channel. So just find that Trade Ideas YouTube channel, do a quick search, these will pop right up. All right, and we've got, well, let's just say there's no shortage of interesting things to talk about today. All right, we might get through all this, we might not, but we're probably going to skip around here and start out with the stock races because they're not disappointing. They continue to produce some massive movers. And before I hand it off to Steve, I just want to say this about the races. Before the races came along, you know, whether you're watching Holly or your favorite top list or alert windows, you might have came across that one, maybe two stocks that, went up or down depending on long or short, 10%. That was a big deal, okay? But the number of massive winners, all right, that I've seen over the past 3 weeks is just insane, okay? Now, getting in them at the proper time is a whole different matter. But boy, let me tell you, I mean, they do not disappoint. We're going to talk about a couple of different races today and the way that I use them, and talk about a couple of different schools of thought on how you might want to start interacting with them. Okay, Steve, so before I get ahead of myself, if you want to take us through a little walk of the
Sure.
larger market moves today, I'll kick it over to you. I think I did. Okay, there we
There
go.
we go. All right. Yeah, just in the same vein, I was on Twitter Spaces today with Wolf Financial and others, and what Jamie's about to talk about is pretty significant. You can see my screen space, which is very valuable to me, is no longer being taken up by the AI. I'm now more interested in what names are coming across this this race. I just kind of blew up that graphic for a moment, but anyway, phase was one I was talking about during the Spaces session, and I saw this thing come through right there, and I said, "Gosh, this one might be a fun day trade," but I didn't pull the trigger. But it's just I'm seeing this left and right. I pulled the trigger on a few, and some are working and some aren't. But boy, this is definitely a game-changing tool. So it's earned the coveted real estate here on my default layout. But my job now here is to quickly talk about the market, and there's a lot going on. The market has put in a good, solid attempt at we'll call it a first hurdle. And what I mean by that is this 50-day moving average is very important. It was acting as incredible resistance. Made a TikTok video back here. I said, watch out below. That was back in April, and we fell a lot. Well, everything's changed since then. We've popped through after this test failed. We pulled back, and now we made it through. Look at that. And then where did we pull back to? We pulled back and tested. So this is a critical line there, and here. But we've gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit. So what I think we're in store for the next couple of days would be just some nice consolidation. The more sideways, the better. Hopefully not too deep of a consolidation in price, but just a couple of days or two just to remind the shorts that they might not be in control anymore, that the bulls are really trying to take over here. If I look at the S&P, actually before I get into that S&P, hang on a second. What I did notice is it was a perfect time for the NASDAQ Qs to do exactly what they just did. All right, this is what we call a pivot level, support back here, resistance right there. So after a nice push off the 50-day, of course it makes sense we're going to run into this pivot level and put a little topping tail wick right there. So I just think a couple of good days of just pausing and sideways is needed. And if that's the case, basically watch out for this rising 10 SMA. When the NASDAQ Qs touch that, there could be some things you might want to take a look at that you might want to buy on some pullbacks. S&P now, same kind of a thing. We didn't quite make it to that pivot level in the S&P. I'll draw that for you. It's just as noticeable. It was support back here and resistance there and support there. But S&P also a nice pullback perfectly to the 50-day. Got ahead of ourselves. It's time for a little sideways action. So don't be expecting too much really in the major markets. I think over the next couple of days, we'll see how it goes. But if you're focused on the races, it doesn't matter what the backdrop of the market's doing. These things are always going to point you in the right direction. Lastly, before I go, Riot, RIOT is the trade of the week. It did trigger earlier today. I bought some before the actual trigger, so I'm sitting long in this, but technically the trade is on and the closing candle looks very promising. Just a really nice looking wedge forming here. Great volume that came in. So this is doing the same thing the market's doing, and I am now anticipating a nice, hopefully move higher the next day or two. Keep your eye on Bitcoin for sure. This is a blockchain type of stock, and it seems to like to follow Bitcoin. So if there's some movement upwards in Bitcoin, that should certainly help Riot, which is the trade of the week and is now active. All right, that's what we got. Hey, David, while Jamie takes it back, all you do is you click on a chart and then you type. Just click and type. That's all you got to do. Then hit enter.
Okay, I think I got it back now, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that little feature that confuses a lot of people because I guess most people are used to seeing a little box pop up.
Yeah.
Nope, with ours you just click and type. Okay, let's see, where do we want to go first? All right, well, expectations today on my compare count readings, I pretty much had dismissed them before the first 15 minutes had even passed. A lot of you know what I'm talking about, but for those of you who don't, I'll just pull this window over real quick just so you know what I'm talking about. This is one of our compare count windows, and this is looking at all stocks hitting a high and a low with a market cap of above $4 billion. So looking at the larger cap stocks. What I typically do is just take a peek at that reading 15 minutes into the open. And of course, when we look at the action on the SPY today, um, my general rule of thumb is if there's a gap up or a gap down, I'm not really going to be paying much attention to these readings. And of course, 61% bearish versus bullish. So 61% of the stocks were hitting lows versus hitting highs. Certainly a bearish reading, but with the gap, I just pretty much went, okay, expect anything today. So typically, the smaller the gap or hardly any gap, these readings become a lot more interesting to me. So just kind of disregarded this today. Now, having said that, we did cover the gap and then we came all the way back down almost to lows, but not quite. So, not exactly the easiest market to navigate, okay? So that's what we need to keep in mind as we go through the rest of this presentation, just kind of a whipsawy, overall market. Now, we're gonna go ahead and knock Holly out here. Holly did have 9 signals, and typically there's 3 different things that I'll showcase if they are present, okay? One is conservative versus moderate spread. So let me go ahead and get the Holly blotter over here. The other one is any applicable trade arounds. And typically these trades are trades that Holly was in where she got stopped out, but the stop area acted more or less as support or resistance, depending on if it was long. And we could make another entry in that. We didn't really have any good examples of that today either. And we certainly didn't have any add-on opportunities that stood out. We did have one really good winner to the short side today in ARQT. So here you can see the blotter. You can see with the exception of ARQT, it was just kind of pretty, just a pretty dismal little blotter down here at the bottom. Now, what I was saying about a trade around, XPO did get stopped out, okay? Got long way up here, got stopped out right about here, and then we proceeded to plunge lower from that stop area. Had XPO just kind of floundered around right here, and that stop area might have acted as a little bit of support, then that might have been a good trade around. But with this, excursion way below, it becomes, well, it's just not on my radar for a trade around once we get that far through a stop area. So definitely no trade around opportunity there. And there's not really a whole lot to point out on these other losers other than the fact that they were just losers, right? Now, note the difference here. We did have a pretty big spread on this ARQT trade, 144 bucks in conservative mode, which was a really nice trade. I mean, look at that beautiful entry up there. All right. And this thing just gave it up quick, hit that stop area right there, coinciding with what you see over here, and then took a little spill lower. So this is how it closed. So you would have made, you know, that's almost another 300 bucks, about 200 change, right? That you could have made if you just held it to the close. But it would have been a little hard to stomach this pullback here, okay? About halfway through. Now, some people will sit the wiggle, right? But the technique I always like to have is, if you were in this trade and you were manually managing that trade, sure couldn't hurt to take half off the table with that profit target. Now, in this case, if you would have taken half off the table, set the other half back to break even, yeah, you would have went through a little mental pain there, but it would have kept you in the trade and you would have gotten to enjoy the rest of the downturn. But even if you took the profit with Holly, fantastic. If you managed to stay in it, a little intestinal fortitude, well, then you would have been rewarded more risk, more reward, and that is certainly the case in the ARQT trade today. We've got a lot of other stuff to talk about, so I don't want to spend too much time on Holly unless anybody has a specific question. We're just going to move right along here. We'll see what she does tomorrow. Now, got some interesting things. You know, IPO action has been huge here lately. There's just been some super sick moves going on, and anchored VWAP has been like the guiding hand for just about everyone that's out there in play. But we're going to talk about stock races first because there was a lot going on today in stock races. And once again, keep in mind, under the backdrop of this intraday action here in the SPY, which, you know, talk about whipsaw, come on. So stock races. As Steve just pointed out on his layout, you can see I've got 3 races here, which I predominantly watch all day. Now I do pay attention to these windows up here, but my primary focus has been on these guys, okay? And you know, I've been hitting trades hot and heavy. I guess this is week 3 since I, you know, was like, okay, there's something here. There's so many big movers every day that let's see what happens. And since we just segued from Holly, and I was just talking about this with Steve before we began the webinar, a lot of the techniques that I've gone over with Holly trades in the past, guess what? They're applicable here, okay? It's just that the races are spitting out just so many massive movers there. Um, you know, they're kind of showing up the AI a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. Because we can always look at the AI trades and see if the patterns are conducive, but we can also apply this same type of strategy to the stock races. And, you know, check out my note here, right here. For me, I've been ponging back and forth between 2 schools of thought. You can pick one or the other, or you can kind of meld the 2 together, which I think is really the optimum way to go, is a hybrid, okay? First school of thought is, okay, based on my experience with the races, there's always going to be some big movers to the upside, winners, so to speak, but there's also going to be losers, all right? So we can take the approach, which is what I've been doing here lately, taking entries off the open because we know we're going to be in the winners, but we're going to have to manage our losers as well. And you can just take trades off the open, all right? Or you can wait for the winners to start piling up, and then, as Steve pointed out on the phase earlier, have them coincide with a pattern that you feel might be conducive, okay? But we all get distracted as traders, all right? We've got so many windows we're trying to keep up with. How many times have you missed something, okay? Here, I'll give you an example of one that I missed today. VRAX, okay? Also an IPO from not too long ago. Started winning some races right off the open, but for some reason I disregarded it. But here's what I should have been focusing on as these, and keep in mind these are 15-minute bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, this thing went sideways for an hour and a half. Now, after I saw it trading in this range for the first hour, could have easily went up here and set a price alert because look what happened, all right? And for those of you who attend the regulars, you know what this pattern right here is. It's an opening range break, okay? It's about as pretty of one as you can get, right? Range bound here and here, the low, the high, and then boom, as soon as we popped right here, got the biggest move of the day from 908 up to roughly almost $14. Was I in this one? No, because I lost track of it, okay? Now, what I've been doing in the opening 15 minutes, anything that wins a race, I'm getting into a small, it's probably, you know, you always hear Andy talking about a starter position. Well, I'd say it's probably even going to be smaller than a starter position. Why am I doing that? To get it on my live blotter, because I can tell you one thing, you're not going to forget about live positions on a live blotter, even if it is small, because that's where we're always looking, okay? If I set a price alert, I might miss it. If I'm creating a watch list from these stocks that are winning races in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then I point it to a top list, I run the risk of losing track of it. So that's what I've been grappling with here lately is how do I make sure that I don't miss these great setups on a stock that's been identified by the races where there's extreme explosive potential, okay? So I've just been funneling into every race winner, and a small share amount is going to vary for different people. Might be 20 shares, might be 25 shares, might be 50, 100, depending on your risk tolerance, okay? But it gets it on your live blotter so you don't forget about it, okay? So before we move on here to some of the trades from today, I just want to show you guys my equity curve here, okay? Here's the open, here's the close, okay? On a day where we had a pretty whipsaw overall market, okay? A little drawdown, which is expected a lot of the times. It's always nice when it just goes green and stays green, but a little drawdown today as the positions ebbed and flowed. And this was a total of 11 positions, okay? 11 positions, 3 of which were short, and the other 8 were long. And out of the 8 longs, 6 were race stocks. The shorts were race stocks as well. The other 2 were from this window right here, pull back to the 130. And if we have time, we'll take a look at them because they were both decent little winners, okay? And this is a very calm window. So if we have time, we'll get to that. But let's talk about the race stocks that I was in today, okay? So number 1, come on charts, why are you doing that to me? Okay, got my arrow covering up my buy arrow there, okay? So first on the list here, TXMD, all right? You can see my buy arrow here, boom. Um, nice action, but look at the secondary pattern that emerged later in the day, about 12:45 my time, that's about 1:45 Eastern. So in it, nice and good, it's up, one of the better movers for today. But as it ebbs and flows here, notice the 10 period is kind of ruling the roost. So when I was in this position here, I'm thinking to myself, well, if it goes sideways, might present for another good entry. And lo and behold, look what unfolds here. All right. Now, I feel that my exits today were average at best. Okay. Um, and still had a pretty impressive yield curve. All right. And going back to the 2 schools of thought, you can manage each position individually, or if you were like me today and you were in 11 different positions, all race stocks, you're going to develop a sense for your overall P&L because you're going to have your losers, you're going to have your winners, and hopefully, like the case today, if I was nice and green, you kind of get to this feel of when your blotter starts to top out. So today I made the decision, you know what? I'm not gonna try to pick and choose. I'm just gonna, maybe get out a half, which you can see I made a pretty good exit up here on TXMD. And then about this time, about 45 minutes before the close, I felt like my overall P&L was topping out, so I just blew out of all of them. Okay, so had some decent exits, had some not so decent exits, but overall, I can't complain too much because it was a nice little profitable day. All right, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. So TXMD, perfect. Okay, perfect entry here, perfect setup here. How was the volume? Of course, all these race stocks. I can't say all of them. Typically, the ones I'm watching are going to be banging with pretty decent relative volume here. All right, Nikola was a pretty good one too. And the funny thing is, when I saw this stock pop up really early on a race today, I'm like, well, I hadn't really seen much of Nikola here lately. At a quick glance here, you can see I got in pretty early. This one broke up pretty quick. All right. Nice little 45-minute range break. Did I add there? No. Look, even another opportunity up here, 2 more add-on opportunities. Okay. on something that was just blowing and going all day. Relative volume, not quite as hardy as the one we just looked at here, but over 2 on the relative scale. Now, I'm going to backtrack to TXMD because if you think I'm not looking at the daily on these, you'd be wrong because, look at TXMD. And when it came out, I'm like, well, it's probably going to want to, if it gets some moxie, looking up to the top of that wick there on a stock that's cranking out some pretty high relative volume, and my eyes immediately went to this little period here. And I think it just fell a little short. We topped out at 961. I was thinking, well, it might have legs to 10, but sellers kind of took control later in the day. Um, Now, just keep that in mind. If it looks horrible on the daily, you might want to pass on it. All right. Let's see. This is one of the shorts, and keep in mind, I took 3 shorts off of this window here. And after everything was said and done, I was up maybe a few pennies on the 3. Might as well just call it a flat. The problem that I'm running into with these these smaller cap shorts is just the inability to pull the trade off or get executed because it's hard to borrow. Um, let's see, is there a question coming in about races here? Yeah, and Matt, a good rule of thumb, like let me just backtrack to TXMD here. Okay. Usually if I'm making early entries, I'm going to use the low of the day as my out. Okay. And adjust your size accordingly. All right. That's a good rule of thumb. What was my entry here? 733, and the low of that candle was 680. So that was about a 50-cent risk there. So, depending on how much you like to risk per trade, you would adjust your share size accordingly when you're making entries this early. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, getting back to this short race here, if we just kind of cycle through the losers here, all right, and you might see a buy and a sell error up there because MGAM, we know what that one did the other day. I bought it first, okay, but I didn't like the little back and forth action. Got a little fidgety on that one, so I went ahead and plugged out and sold it for. It wasn't a flat, as you can see the arrows there, but it was a small loser, and I'm glad I did because this thing peeled off pretty darn good. But even if you tried to take one of these, I can assure you it would not have been borrowable at E-Trade, probably not borrowable at IB either. So a lot of these short side races produced today if you were able to short them off of the open. Only problem is a lot of these you can't get the shorts on. So that's why I'm predominantly focusing on the longs, even when the market's, whipsawing or even kind of trending down. All right, moving right along here, RDBX was a really good entry. Only problem is I managed my exits very poorly on this one. Pretty much ended up flat in the trade when 492 was my entry and we topped out a little short of 540. That's a very good percentage, but didn't really take heed. And even with these poor exits here, still had a pretty good blotter. All right. Some you're going to do better on than others, vice versa. As I said, my train of thought today was just focusing on my overall P&L on the basket of race stocks that I had accumulated there. Now, the other 2 shorts that didn't work so well, Tau, you can see I got short pretty much on that opening wick there, ended up covering up here. ASRT, another small loser as well, because if you flip this chart upside down, a lot of the ones that are going up like this, they're going to continue. But the shorts today, the ones I could get executed on, just didn't pan out well. Covered here and here for a mediocre loser, but on the basket of 3 shorts that I did execute, up slightly, but we're just going to call it flat today. Okay, let's see. Here's a long that didn't work out so well today. KRKR. This looks like the short that I just put on. Got caught in that wick there, and this one stopped out. But overall, the number of big winners coming through these, uh, both the 1 minute change and positive change from open, guys, I wasn't even in, where to go, where to go, this one today. And the irony is this, okay? This is when it started showing up in the races right here. But as I said earlier, we can't see everything. We're always going to miss something. This is my momentum ticker right here. All right. Just showing me stocks hitting a high with relative volume of 3. Okay. Well, look who made an appearance right here at the blue arrow. All right. I think it was even one click before that, but that's fine. Okay. Yeah, right here. All right. Look at that flat action on QRTEB today. Open at 8:30, and then 2.5 hours into the open, it breaks on volume right here. I mean, look at that beautiful little range break, which would have had to be pretty quick. And then boom, after it moves from almost $5 up to 852, and probably right here is when it started coming through the races. I'm thinking to myself, I missed this beautiful break here. I don't want to chase it. Yeah, I'm going to pass on it. And then we can see what happened. And that's another point to make here is, as traders, especially on the intraday front, we're always taught, don't chase, don't chase, don't chase. But, there's so many stocks that have come through these races here lately, just like QRTEB, where, you know, if you dial your share size down a little bit and go, okay, might be a little chasey, but I'm not going to do a full lot. Maybe I'll do a third of a lot. And if it does pull back on me, I'll try to make 2 or maybe 3 entries on this entire position. And that's really got me thinking about how I trade, right? And this QRTEB is a perfect example of going through that mental exercise and bringing the share size down and going for, the mentality of, well, if it goes on a small lot, so be it. But if it throws me a few wiggles and gives me some pullbacks, well, then, I'll have the opportunity to accumulate more. But QRTEB didn't give you a whole lot of time to get in at these lower levels. Yes, Sam, I'll be sharing all these windows with you guys here towards the end of the presentation. I'll drop them in the chat panel. Positions you decide to take in the races, do they have to have won a race? Okay, Matt, the question is, the positions that you decide to take in the races, do they have to have won a race? Correct, correct. I'm only entering stocks that have won a race. And don't get me wrong, it's tempting sometimes, especially on the open. You'll see a race going on and you'll think, well, and I'm not saying that some of these might not be winners. I mean, flip a coin, you probably got a 50-50 shot. But my rule set is I'm only taking entries in the first 15, sometimes 30 minutes on every race winner. And I'm getting small lots on my blotter and then keying in on the additional add-on opportunities moving forward throughout the rest of the day. And as I have success with this, just like any trading plan, let's say I have a good week this week, and whatever your magic number of points or performance is, you're like, okay, my small lots are now going to go from X to Y because I've had success, right? And you just keep scaling it up. All right, Shannon, just looking at your question, there's a trick to sizing the race windows. I can only shrink them down a little bit and they end up taking most of my screen. Well, I'd say the minimum size of a race window should be, well, I've got 10 cars, 10 stocks in each of these races. Now, that brings up a good point. Do I have to see the race? Because if I'm only interested in the winners, then theoretically, well, I'm not able to size it horizontally like that. But you could stack them like this. Because if you're only paying attention to race winners, theoretically, you don't need to see the race, right?
Hey,
Just
can I show
just
something real quick?
just my 2 cents. Yes, Steve.
So I'm going to change presenter real quick because I'm going
Go
to,
ahead.
this is exactly how I use it. All right. Coming to my screen. So there's a race. I had another one in there, but I'm really only interested in this one. But I'm not interested in watching it go across the screen. I'm still interested in this kind of stuff. So I've got this little alleyway over here, and I can look up and start. I'm constantly clicking through and seeing who's been winning the last few races, and then go back to, what I was looking at. So I only use that little margin right there in my layout currently. That's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right. I was just trying to read the question here from Matt. Right, Matt. And so, once again, let me get the screen back here. Is, my little technique might sound a little aggressive or crazy to some people, but I'm familiar with managing a large blotter of positions. That's my preferred method of trading. And so I'm piling into just about every winner on the 1 minute change long and the position from open long. Um, and then sometimes they just go right off the bat. And then other times the pristine setups will have the potential to form. Okay. So, it's a lot better of a watch list because let's face it, all the windows on your trade edit screen, your favorite, your okay favorite, I don't think they get more eye time than your live blotter, right? If that makes sense from a kind of a psychological perspective. And the question from Sam is, can you explain why I'm only running 1 minute races? Okay. Well, let's not confuse the length of the race with the name of the race, because this race here is change in 1 minute. What's moved the most in 1 minute? Now, coincidentally, it is a 1 minute race, just like this one over here. Well, did not mean to kill that guy. Sorry about that. Um, Coincidentally, these are also 1 minute races, right? Um, Simple to me, I get the information faster, okay? And it's been working for me. So, it's a personal preference. You can do 5 minute races, 20-minute races. Um, but then again, I've always been a fan of changing 1 minute and 1 minute volume, because you get the report quicker. If something is really moving briskly, and let's say it moved up 3% in a 5 minute period, but it moved up 1% in that first 2 minutes and then another 1% in that third minute. If you have to wait for 5 minute report, well, a lot of potential, change that could be working in your for your benefit, you've missed out on. Now, keep in mind that's just my preference, okay? Not saying that 1 minute races are the best. That's just better suited for my mentality. Yes, there is a change in 1 minute filter. And since the stock races are predicated around a top list, the 1 minute change in 1 minute is not native in the top list. But don't worry, in the links that I drop at the end of the session here, you're going to have the custom formula for the 1 minute. Then you can add it to your custom formulas and then point your list to it. And while I'm talking about that, if I open the top list for this race, well, actually, that was the one that I just killed. Let me see if I minimized it or if I closed it, because I can pull it back up here and give you guys a peek. Okay, it looks like I canned it, so let me just pull it out of my cloud here. Sorry about that.
And if the 1 minute custom formula doesn't translate over in Jamie's link for whatever reason, just email us info@trade-ideas.com and we can help you get that in your account so it works.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple. I can walk you guys through it. Okay, 1 minute change, if we show the underlying top list here, you don't have to worry about inserting it into the filter complement if we take a peek here, because the filter complement is just very simple. You know, minimum maximum price, minimum shares, minimum relative volume. It's in the column, right? We want to point to the column, and we still have to add the column. So if we pop back in here and I show you my columns list, you'll see that U45 is my custom change in 1 minute. And that's going to be included in the links that I drop here. Then you'll just have to use go to tools here and your formula editor, and you can do it all right here from the client. You just pick a prefix that's not being used, and you'll see how simple the formula is here. I think that was U45. That's it. That's the formula. You just drop it in here, pick the prefix, name it, leave the format on 1, graphics on none. Once you do that, that'll be accessible in your custom filter list. So easy peasy there. All right, little time check here. Boy, see, only 15 minutes left. So I think with the time that we have left, I'm going to talk about the other 2 long trades that I had today, which worked quite well. And I have to tip my hat to Steve on this one as well, because it was from this window here, a pullback to the 130 period. But we're talking about on the 15-minute intraday. Let's see, the first one was NYT. And when I was talking about my poor exits, this is definitely one of them. All right. So NYT came through right here at 9:15. You can probably still see it down here. Come on, give me the arrow. Okay, you can barely see the top of the blue arrow. Came down here, wicked right back up. I'm like, ooh, that looks really good. And the reason I love these trades is because most of the time you can take very small risk. Okay. So waited for that candle to close, took a stab right here. My stop loss was just outside of that wick, and we got a nice little move from 31.20. Of course, hindsight's 2020. A nice move up here. Of course, as I said earlier, my exits were poor on this one. Still made money, but you can see my exits here and here. So the risk area is right here. That's my stop loss. My entries here. Here's my risk area, and look at this nice profit area. I mean, even up here is decent, but boy, that's pretty significant. And I like to focus on the larger caps on these guys. And let's see, 5 billion on NYT. And then the other long trade that was not a race trade was EOG. We can probably still see it here since this is such a tame window, which I like too. EOG tested it here, bounced above, tested it one more time here. It's like, yeah, I like this one. Took some shares here. Risk just outside of the wick that was put in there. And then we had a nice area of profit. I didn't make, I got a little antsy here. I was like, yeah, I don't know if this one's going to do it or not. Got out here, but then made a much better exit up here on EOG. So, just keep in mind that equity curve that I showed you guys was all predicated basically around 8, 9 race stocks, and then 2 from here, okay? So this window will also be in the links that I drop. And I think what we're gonna do is we don't have near enough time to even get started on the other topic here, the IPO action. But I will tell you this, okay? I'll give you 2 examples here, all right? And we got enough time for that. And this IPO list is going to be in the list of links that I drop here as well. This one will also contain a custom formula, which I've included already. And it's going to be called, recent IPO. And what you're going to do is you're just going to put a 0 in the max field once you get it inserted into your account. So what you want to focus on with these guys. Let's just pick VRAX, which has been, doing its thing. Limited days. And here's what I really like to do is stretch out the 15-minute and then compress it a little bit, just so you can see all the action that's transpired. Okay. Now we all know this one's had a nice run, got all the way back here, popped new highs, and then just collapsed down here. It still had a pretty good setup today. But what you want to do on these guys, once you get all the price action visible, is just click here, then select the anchor and anchor to the first day. And look how this thing ruled the roost, got up here, acted as resistance, boom, took a little swoon. It reclaimed it, and then it went on its nice little run here. But boy, look what happened as soon as we came back down here through that level. I mean, just whoosh, all right? So, anchored VWAP is good for any type of trading setup, but even Brian Shannon will tell you it's really great for stocks with limited trading history. So let's see here. What was another good one? Oh yeah, Getty Images. And I don't know how I missed this one because, been around for a very long time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days old. I mean, look at this. So first day of trading way back here. And just look, I mean, the whole time it was doing this. And sometimes you're going to find these. I mean, there's several of them out there right now. They just don't have as much trading. Well, actually, these are, 15-minute days. I mean, look how it was just writing and writing and writing the anchored VWAP. So your decision or your adjustment for your share size and your risk are super simple. Below the anchored VWAP by a threshold of whatever, a dime, 20 cents, whatever your preference is, would have kept you in the trade, and then you would have got to enjoy a big gap up. Okay. Now that's not always the case, but check out the action on the anchored VWAP even once the gap up occurred. All right. It's well above it now. Kind of looks like a moving average now, but it has been the guiding hand. Now, if this thing ever starts to peel off, this area is going to be of great interest. Okay. So there's a lot of them out there, guys. I'm going to give you the windows to find them. And when you see an IPO, you're just going to start anchoring that VWAP to the first day of trading. A lot of the times you might want to anchor it to the first day of trading and the high that's been put in. That can show you additional levels, but typically they're going to coincide. But once you start noticing these VWAP levels, if the stock hasn't went yet to it, if it's slightly below it or slightly above it, well then all you do is start setting up your price alerts, and that way you won't miss them when they do get to that crucial level. All right, so time just kind of melted away today talking about the races. So I tell you what, let me go ahead and drop these links in here. And I see questions still trickling through. Yeah, good question, Matt. But unfortunately, there's no way to backtest race winners at this point in time. Don't worry, we've got a lot of enhancements that we all would like to see here. So look at the races as being in their infancy right now. There's going to be ways that we modify them to make them better. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat panel here just to make sure everything made it through. Now you're going to see the IPO top list first, and then you're going to see the custom formula that one needs. Pull back to the 130, no customs are needed. Change from open, real-time stock race, change in 1 minute, real-time stock race. And there is the 1 minute filter for the custom formula at the bottom for the change in 1 minute stock race there. All right, Steve, any questions I need to backtrack on? If not,
I don't believe so, no.
Scott, if you're ready to walk us on out, the time has come.
All right. Yeah, sure. A couple items to bring to your attention before we close out the session. first one is make sure that you have the My Favorite Strategy Indicators ebook. It's written by our director of software development, and it's got some great pointers on how to use trade ideas. Just go to tradeideas.com/strategy to learn more about that. We do have a partnership and an integration with Interactive Brokers. I think they're our second or third most popular broker that uses Trade Ideas users. Go to trade-ideas.com/IBKR to learn more about connecting Interactive Brokerage account directly to your Trade Ideas installation and automating your trading or managing your account on Interactive Brokerage directly from Trade Ideas without having to use their software. We have stock racing, of course. We've been talking about that quite a bit recently. You can learn more at trade-ideas.com/stockrace. It is the new way to visualize trading. Just like our Interactive Brokerage integration, we also have an integration with E-Trade. So if you're already an E-Trade client or thinking about becoming one, you can do $0 commission trading directly from Trade Ideas by connecting your E-Trade account with your Brokerage Plus module within Trade Ideas, manage your positions in E-Trade and do trading directly from Trade Ideas charts using your E-Trade account. You can learn more about that at tradeIdeas.com/E-Trade. And as mentioned at the top, we have a 2-week-long test drive coming up starting the second week of August. You can sign up for that at trade-ideas.com/test drive. If you're a standard subscriber, it's a great way to try out the premium features for a small fee. And if you are not a subscriber at all, it's a fantastic way to check out everything Trade Ideas has to offer for that. The cost just covers the extra exchange agreement fees and support that we give during that 2 weeks. We also are going to be giving special support sessions during the day and special webinars, so stay tuned for more information about that. But go to tradeIdeas.com/test drive to sign up, save your spot, get ready to rock on the 15th. And if you just want to start up a subscription now and save some money or do an upgrade today, just use the code FASTDATA. It's good for the rest of this month. Saves 15% off of your first month or year of Trade Ideas or upgrade. And if you have any questions, just shoot us an email, info@tradeIdeas.com. You can find Jamie on Twitter. He's QuantBot. Steve Gomez is TISTG. We also have at Trade Ideas, and we can be found on YouTube under Trade Ideas and Facebook Trade Ideas Pro. So thanks everyone. The recording will be up later on tonight, and you get an email reminder tomorrow about how to find it. So have a great rest of your day, Steve and Jamie, and I guess I'll see you at the Padres game tomorrow, Steve. Have a good one.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See you next time.